Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15th of February, and you are watching episode 124 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap providing insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, Cairns Council elections, the preference for independent councillors, my guest Mayoral candidate Paul Taylor, and the incumbent Division 9 councillor, Brett Oles, who is seeking a third term. Welcome, Paul and Brett.
G'day, mate. How you doing?
Okay, gentlemen.
Good evening, Bill. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Look, that's just a quick intro. You're the ones who are going for election, so you're the ones who have to sell yourself. So if I start off with you, Paul, can you give us a bit of your personal background and also why you're running for council and what the priorities for you are?
Yeah, thanks, Bill, and thanks for the opportunity. Look, basically, my working experience, I was very fortunate to serve the community of Queensland with 45 years of policing. I served in various positions. In the last 10 to 14 years, I was in executive positions. And when I left the police in 2022, I was the Deputy Commissioner for Regional Queensland. So in effect, had responsibility for the delivery of policing services outside the southeast corner. And so not only the policing service, but those corporate areas, including the air wing and the maritime assets with the water police, horses, dogs, DNA, weapons licensing, road safety, traffic. So a variety of activities, corporate activities. So what brings me to the mayoral candidacy is I was happily retired and enjoying a retired life in far north Queensland and all the beautiful locations that I've always wanted to visit. I started exploring those. I had previously been approached for opportunities in a political career, and funnily enough, I'm not overly fond of politics per se. I have a number of friends that are politicians, and I see often the frustrations on their face when they're personally conflicted between what their views and their constituents' views are and those of the political alignment. So I was approached by the late Kevin Burns, who was a mayor some years ago, and had a number of conversations with him, and I looked at I suppose the candidates that had nominated that they were going to run, and whilst I had nothing personally against them, and they're all nice people, I just didn't sit comfortably with me that they were the people that could lead Cairns into a place that it could or should be. And selfishly, I want to live in Cairns for the rest of my life, and so I, in the end, committed to running as mayor. And so my platform is pretty simple. You know, I would run council much the same as a business. I think council should be focusing, and it should be run like a board, should be focusing on those critical strategic issues to position the town well and truly into the future. We know that there's a number of challenges facing Cairns at the moment. The potential lack of water has been within the media spectrum in recent times. The potential growth that the far north Queensland, and more particularly Cairns, and indeed a lot of cities across Queensland and Australia are going to face in years to come. And how do you accommodate that growth in a way that it's balanced and that it doesn't interfere with the lifestyles that people have invested in previously? So given my background in crime, and more particularly in youth crime, because that has been an emerging issue for some time, I think I was well positioned to understand the dynamics around how youth crime works. And indeed, whilst it's a state government matter, law and order predominantly sits with police and youth justice, but there is a role for council to play. So I believe that I have the skill sets around my leadership capability to really make a difference to the Cairns community, and certainly I would head in a very different direction than what my other competing candidates would head.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much. Brett, over to you. You've got 2 terms under your belt, so you know how the system works. And you've contributed for the last 2 terms. What's your focus now for this upcoming term?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I've been a councillor now for 2 terms, and it's been great actually. Over the first couple of terms, we've really knocked out a few of the goals, because I only got in with kind of small goals, thinking, you know, council is, a lot of people say rates, roads and rubbish. I wanted more footpaths because my kids were riding to school and I'd ride with them. And it was like playing Frogger, because I grew up here ever since I was 12, and it was just different. There was a lot more traffic, but the other infrastructure hadn't been upgraded. So I kind of really thought maybe I could make a difference there. And when I was lucky enough to get in on my first try, I realised the council does so much more, you know. And now I've been there for 2 terms and advocating for people. I love being a representative. I actually love being the divisional councillor and all that grassroots stuff. I'm literally working with people on the ground, the residents. And but I'm hoping that we can get after March 16th a cohesive council. We've seen over the last, we're talking about independence tonight, I guess. And I'm not saying all people in a team is bad, but when you've got a group, it's like anything. When you've got a good group, everything goes fine. When it's not so good, everything turns to custard. So we just need some like-minded, community-first people, like people that put the residents first over their own groupthink or ideology. And we've got to start fighting back more against the state. Now, I use the word fight. It doesn't have to be a fight. We've got to work with them. But if they're not doing what they need to be doing, then we do need to hold them accountable. And we need to be held accountable ourselves as elected representatives. So I honestly believe over the last 10 years, our SA4 division up here in North Queensland, we've had the least amount of money spent on us by the state per capita and by aggregate. And that's not including all the extra tourists that stay here every night. Those numbers aren't included. So it's even worse because they use infrastructure. They use water, rubbish, footpaths, roads, which is great, but they don't get included in any statistics by the federal government or the state. So we really need to advocate better, I think, to get the state to pay more attention to us. I mean, the government's had 4 members of government for the last decade up here, with just recently a dual minister, an assistant minister, former treasurer and speaker of the House, pretty important positions. I know that one of them's now no longer a minister and the assistant minister is a minister now, but without all that, these guys have the power to sit in cabinet and make some noise. And we need to ask them to be doing that on behalf of Cairns. So in Division 9, you know, I want to advocate for less stoplights on the highway for one. Let's stop letting suburbia encroach out to what we call the jewel in the crown, being Palm Cove, but even Trinity Beach and the other beaches, they just get treated like an outback town by the state government. Just let's take away the roundabouts. Let's not have overpasses. South of Cairns gets them. North of Cairns doesn't. Townsville, Toowoomba, they all get them. North of the Barron River, we seem to get less in that respect. There's different road links, footpath links. The Wangetti Trail needs to be delivered. It's a state project, but we need to do whatever we can as a council to support that and make it happen. We also need to advocate for other priorities like the Smithfield Park behind JCU. We've got Crankworks here and everything else, but we only have 32 kilometres of mountain bikes trails up there, and we really need to get up to about 85 to 100 kilometres, 85 minimum. And there are plans in place to do it, but we need the state to come to the party. And then saving Taylor's Point, I think we're pretty damn close there. I've been chipping away at that for even before I was a councillor, probably for a decade now. And but I'm one of the only elected people that's been talking to the owners. And what the owners of Taylor's Point are sick of is they don't hear from anyone until election comes up. Next thing they're reading in the paper how Taylor's Point's going to get bought. But I got a call from one of the Predators a couple of weeks ago saying, we really appreciate you. You've met with us all along the way and you've been advocating and trying. And now we have the current state MP, Craig Crawford, and the opposition candidate, Bree James, both saying it's going to be their top priority. So we saw that happen with Earl Hill last time. It was made a priority from both sides of government. They got in and we got Earl Hill saved and handed over to public hands. I'm hoping the same thing for Taylor's Point. So I've got some small local stuff that I really want to knock out over the next 4 years with council, but I've also got some bigger stuff, and we need to start working either better with the state government or get the gloves on, whichever it takes. Hopefully it's plan A, where we can work collaboratively with them. But if they won't work with us like we've had for the last decade, then we do need to get the gloves out, Bill.
Do you think there's also a need to further educate the general populace in regards to what the council's role is and what the state role is? And because far too many people attach the status to or ask councils to champion topics or causes that really aren't their domain. Of course, in our school system, we have next to nothing in regards to our governmental system and that. Do you think it needs more rigour from councillors when they're confronted with an issue to sort of, all right, acknowledge the issue, but no, also strongly point out whether it's an issue within their domain or it's state?
Yeah, well, there's two schools of thoughts there. One is obviously every issue, when it boils down to it, becomes a local issue. But there's lots of things we can't play. I get people emailing me literally with immigration issues, and can I help them with that? But instead of me just saying no, it's federal, and I could literally email that back and I'd be correct. What I do is say, hey, look, that's a federal issue. Here's Warren Encher's office number. Here's his staff, and I put them on, so at least I've given them a contact. Same thing with the state. And I actually believe, at least out here in Division 9, it's been funny. People say to me all the time, because I'm very open and accessible, I'm on Facebook all the time on these different community pages. They're like, there are so many people now that realize there'll be a question asked, Brett, can you do this? And then all of a sudden another resident will answer it and say, that's actually a state issue. That's a highway, this and that. So I think they are getting educated as we go along. But yeah, every single issue that comes up, it's the council's the first port of call that people reach out to. So I think we just got to be delicate, like you said, have empathy and be like, yeah, we understand your problem, but here's the correct way to go. And I do try and do that. And I think some other councillors do as well. But then you've got some councillors that just say, not our deal, go away kind of thing. You can't be like that with people. You need to at least let them know. But when on the advocacy side of things, I do believe that if these issues, you pass them on, you do the right thing, give them the contacts, and then nothing happens, then the next form of advocacy is, hey, we need to start putting pressure on as your local representative on our state MP or on our federal MP, whichever it is. So I believe we can't just palm it off. It'd be really nice. My job would be so much easier if I just palmed everything off. But sometimes you do have to fight on their behalf.
Yeah, I agree that you've got to be courteous and let people know what it is. But I also think that it should be more clearly stated, even on websites and things like that, in regards to what the roles of each level of government is. Although you probably know from my background and that I'm not really a fan of local government. But Paul, with your situation and your past experience, there's got to be a lot of emphasis on you and to deal with crime and that. Do you think some people might be getting a very high expectation that you can achieve some results, or how do you get your message across, but also indicate, well, with some humility that not everything's within your realm to fix, but you'll do everything you can to get it addressed?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that there is not a great understanding of the different levels of government, but the Local Government Act clearly points out for both councillors and mayors that there's a leadership role within their community. So, as Brett articulated, that advocacy role in regards to representing constituents outside of matters that don't fall in the council's domain is part of leadership. So, if the majority of people are very vocal in relation to something that sits at a state or federal government, I think as a local leader, a strong local leader, it's incumbent on them to represent through advocacy what the people think. Now, whether they do any good or not, that's to be judged at the end of the day. But sitting silent certainly won't make any changes. And so in regards to crime, there's no doubt that crime per se sits within the state government and predominantly the police. Youth crime, you've got others involved. And so, but there's a role to play. Section 10 of the Local Government Act clearly says there's an opportunity there for local government to form partnerships with state government on a range of activities. And historically, from my perspective, I've worked with a number of councils that have partnered with police in regards to a range of activities that collectively produce a better outcome for the community. So I don't, I'm not professing to say that we should be spending money on crime. What I'm saying is that there's great opportunities out there in regards to the built environment. So those things that council are clearly responsible for, the footpaths, the lighting and so forth, if they're done in a way that they prevent crime, or if there's a crime spot and they're aware of it because they're informed by the police, they understand what the contributors to crime are, they're able to look at those areas and prioritise those areas for extra lighting, extra footpaths, reduction of vegetation, so they reduce the opportunities for crime. As far as crime prevention goes, when I was in the police, police don't police the community. It's community policing, so it tries to engage everyone, and the more they're involved, the more partnerships that are formed, the greater the outcome. So if people think that police in isolation are going to win the battle on crime, they're badly mistaken. And so, some simple examples of that, every sporting activity that occurs in the Cairns local government area predominantly is on council land. So council are in fact the landlords for a lot of these activities. No one's actually galvanised the enthusiasm that local sport provide to see what do they bring to the party to try and nurture young people that might have a toe in crime but aren't entrenched in it. Those that are entrenched in it, the police are dealing with them. They need to be in custody. But those that are just entering, there's possibilities where if they nurtured in the right way, and there's plenty of examples where outstanding sporting stars have started off on the wrong foot as juveniles, where they've been involved in juvenile crime, and they've been nurtured through sport and become very productive citizens. So they're the sorts of things that I'm about advocating, and recently I did advocate in behalf of Cairns before a parliamentary committee to try and get some fundamental changes to the way the Youth Justice Act worked, and how young offenders are managed to try and get some reprieve. I talk to a lot of people, as does Brett, and does a lot of those that are campaigning at the moment. And, invariably, nearly everyone, the first thing they talk about is crime. And I'm clear to point out where crime sits, but I also point out where council can assist and help, and the advocacy role of the mayor in particular to try and advocate on behalf of the Cairns population for a better outcome. And so those that think that council don't have a role to play in that, maybe they consider some of the conversation that I've just related to you.
Okay, Paul, if you could just tip your phone up a little bit so we can get the top of your head as well and see your shirt. Yeah, that's a very important point, and you bring up another very interesting topic, community sport. And I know Brett's a big pusher for various sports club and activity, surf life saving and the rest of it, football. That is a key for most communities.
I just don't look like one now.
And triathlete.
Yes,
well, I was going to say it's about time you shaped up. You're going for your third term, mate. No, but for all communities, sports is rather a cornerstone activity for bringing communities together, and we've got. Even though it's a hot, sticky place, we do have a large variety of sports that people can participate in. But one of the biggest problems I noticed is, and I'm sure there's a lot of parents who would have a complaint about it, is the cost of even local sports, joining local sports. The overall cost, there's a lot of costs on clubs in regards to insurance, and then there's purchase of things like equipment and uniforms. A lot of parents don't get much change out of $300 to $500 putting their kids into any basic sports. Do you think there's a need to, all right, the councils can't actually finance types of things, but sort of they can do reasonable things in regards to keeping the cost of sporting venues down that they control? Because that sort of cornerstone activity, that needs enhancing, especially if you want to use it for encouraging children who are a little bit on sort of pathway to crime if they can participate freely in sports because the costs are a bit lower. Do you think council's got a role there?
It's a tough one because actually council does work with all the local sporting clubs. As soon as they're not for profit, which all the sporting clubs are, they get rates-based financial assistance. They get their sewage charges. I think they pay. They get 70% discount, and they've got 100% in their cleansing wiped off. So it's not actually that expensive for the land itself. But then when you've got lights, if you're training under lights, that's really expensive. You're mowing the lawns, fertilizer, all that kind of stuff. That adds up. So when it comes to, and council's got these the Go Clubs program, which every club's registered with, and every club with just one piece of paper can get I think it's $6,000 now a year. It used to be 5,000 with just a stroke of a pen, and they qualify for that straight away for in-kind assistance with different stuff. So we're already playing in that space a bit, but the expenses aren't really coming, like I said, from the renting of the fields and everything else. There's a lot more that goes into it. I do agree that if the price had come down, I don't know. See, at the end of the day, someone's got to pay for it. So the answer is always yes. We can do extra waste pickups that people want. We could subsidise kids' sport. We can do anything. But where's that money coming from? And there's only 3 levers in council. One of them is we can reduce our level of service in other areas or push off different capital projects to afford it. And if that's the case, what are they going to be? Because people don't want us to lower the service. We actually do a pretty good job around. The second lever is we could take on debt. We could borrow money from CTQ at a lower interest rate than what other people can as the council. So, but again, that has to be paid back and there is interest on it. And the third lever is rates. And now everyone wants as lower rates as possible. And I absolutely get that, especially in these hard times of cost of living. So anything we subsidise or do anything else, that's the questions we always ask ourselves. And it's a balancing act. And that's why we've got a lot of highly educated and smarter people than me, the bean counters, giving us the best advice. Now, we don't have to take their advice if we don't want as the elected council, but we've got to listen to it, look through it all. Then we've got to make our decisions. What are we comfortable with? Are the outcomes better? Having more kids in sport, if we make it free or cheap, then taking on a bit more debt to pay for that, is that a worthwhile endeavour or not? And I guess that's the question that comes up around every single budget, because we always get asked by the community for lots of different things, and we could do everything, but again, you have to find a way to pay for it, and you've only got those 3 levers. So I don't want to give people false hope out there that council will step up and we're going to give your kids free sport next year, because that could add up. I think there's 3,000 members of the Central Footy Club. Now they're not all playing sport, but you go through all the juniors and you go for the whole region of Cairns, soccer, Aussie rules baseball, every sport you can think of. You're talking about thousands and thousands of kids. What's that amount? And then how do we pay for that? I don't want to lead people on, but I agree with you. It would be awesome, but I just don't think our budgets could be enough wiggle room in there to pay for that.
I'm not looking for council to pay things. It's just to make it as easy as possible for clubs to operate with.
Well, yeah, and I agree. And we do
those levers that you can control.
Yeah, through the Go Clubs program, we actually do give huge subsidies to all the sporting clubs already. And maybe I should email some stuff through to you. You can put up there on your webpage later. A lot of the things that we do with clubs, because they actually do get huge rate-based financial assistance already. If they have pokies, they don't get anything, no rate-based financial assistance, but every other sporting club absolutely gets that assistance.
I think one of the key things is to have, as a council, to have full knowledge what grants and that they can get from the state or federal government and point people in the direction, because I get the impression that there's a lot of money out there from the state and federal sphere. If you control through the information and put in an application for some of these grants at sporting clubs or any non-for-profit organisation.
Yeah, Bill, look, there's no doubt that there are other avenues other than council, and I agree with Brett. One of the concerns I have is that we've got a responsible financial management plan, that we're not getting into debt and we're delivering those core issues that council should be. And while your proposition is a great proposition, I think looking at avenues where we can support people to make sure they know how to make funding grants, that we know where avenues are to seek financial assistance for the things that you've said. Having been on the board of the PCYC for a number of years, applications for grants are not easy to complete. So having a individual that's very skilled at doing that, and knowing how to put a grant submission together is often the key to being successful. So they're the sorts of things that we should be looking at. You know, whilst council can't be the doer of everything, council can certainly point in the direction and support people to actually gain that support that they might need. And whether it's a referral, as Brett said, to immigration about a matter, and contacts are vital. And I know Brett and some of his other councillor that are currently in have great contacts with people from all levels of government. And that's what you need to do in that game, and you need to leverage off those to push people around. But, you know, we need to get as many kids as we can involved in sport, and that are getting direction and nurtured in a positive way, because they are some of the key factors that lead kids down a path of positivity and not down a path where they're committing criminal activities. Okay,
we'll just move on to planning. And that recently we've had the consequences of Cyclone Jasper. The northern beaches were affected more than anywhere else from that. It wasn't so much the blow, because it was hardly a blow, but we did suffer a lot of rain. I think we did get, I think my place got about 640 or 50 mils so in a day or so. So it was a bit of a dramatic event. We've seen the results of that heavy rainfall, and the whole point is, it's something a lot of people say, oh, it's a once in 100-year event, but the whole point is those type of events are occurring regularly somewhere along the coast when we have a cyclone. So, you know, we can get, you know, 2 or 3. We might be the place that it comes 2 or 3 times in a row. So, Brett, you've been around for a while. What do you see as some of the problems we do with planning in regards to our little strip of land we got, you know, locked in between the sea and the hills?
Yeah, it's obviously a tough one, and it was devastating. I think about 93% of Cairns was relatively unaffected, but the 5 to 7% that was devastating. And there are still people right now that they don't know where they're going to live for the long term. So my heart goes out to them. But when it comes to resilience and everything, it's 2024, and we live in a first world country, and we still don't have highway access to Matrons or Holloways Beach, and sometimes Yorkies can get out Dunn Road now though, but Holloways and Matrons, they can't even make it to the highway. So when that alert went out, that Australian warning system, and told people evacuate, most of it, they were already sitting on top of roofs. I mean, the flooding had already gone through the house, but they couldn't have got out even if that message had come through a day and a half earlier, because for 2 days they couldn't have driven out to the highway because it floods. So we need to flood proof our highway and those major access roads to people living down there. So because we know the Barron Delta, people build on it knowingly, and that's why a lot of Queenslanders went out back in the day. And occasionally this has happened, which is totally devastating. But we had to have swiftwater crews go in there. We were so lucky and blessed that no one died in this event, and there were actually no swiftwater rescues, like no one hanging to a tree in the waters. There were boat rescues from roofs and everything else, of course, and legends going in on their jet skis and tinnies. So when it comes to resilience and future planning, what do we need to look at? First of all, let's make sure that our people can get out, even if there is flooding happening. So let's raise those roads up and everything else. Yeah, it might cost money, but it's their taxes that we're spending on their behalf. So I think, and then another range road, like we saw, because we were so close. We're 2 hours away from having no treated water, which would have been terrible, absolutely terrible. The Gillies went down, the Coranda Range went down, the Rex Range went down, and Palmerston Range all went down. And as you know, Cairns has no dump. We have transfer stations. So we take out up to the Mareeba dump. Our guys couldn't go up there, so they were driving all the trash and everything down to Townsville. And then Ingham got flooded and it went under. And if it had stayed under for another 36 hours, another day and a half, we would have been turning people away from the tram station, and people would have illegally dumped everywhere. Would have been a week away from looking like, you know, London back in the 1500s. But it's these kind of things. We need another range road. And you and I have talked about this in the past. We need another range road that's flood proof, that's a tunnel, and then goes up to the ground. And that's another issue too. We can expand our future growth towards 2050 and beyond up in the tablelands in Mareeba. Like, why do we have to do it in the Mount Peter corridor and take all that rural sugar? We could talk for hours and hours. But this is an opportunity after this disaster to really have a look at, okay, what could we have done better? Because all our drains and everything are built to Q100 levels. A 1 in 100 year event, basically you got a 1% chance of it happening. And then if you get another one in that same year, that's a 1 in 10,000% chance of it happening, you know. So it's it can happen though. But all our drains and everything, they went over and everything else. Do we need to start looking at building bigger going forward? You can't go back and change the pipes and everything else you've got now without a huge expense. But we should be looking forwards like, okay, if we can expect more of these type of events, should we be putting houses in deltas for huge river systems like the Mulgrave, to the Barron, everything else? Should we be allowing people to be building on the oceans? You know, that's why we did the coastal hazard adaptation strategy, the CHAS. But these are all things we are looking at that the council already has started. And then after March 16th, a week or so later, when the new council gets together, this is absolutely something over the next, you know, it's not going to be a snap your fingers and we're going to fix it next year. But there are some serious questions need to be asked, and there will be a lot of consultation. There'll be a lot of people looking back into the things that maybe weren't done as efficiently as they could have been. Where's the areas for improvement in case this happens again? But I definitely think in 2024, in a first world country, in a beautiful place like Cairns, Australia, we should be able to have people drive or not get to the highway to be able to get out. Because remember a few years ago, we had a tidal wave warning back in the late 90s, I believe it was, and people couldn't get out of their suburbs. They were all backed up. So if the tidal wave actually hit, which it didn't, thank God, but if it hit, mate, but we've known this for years, and yet we still can't get the roads up to scratch. And some of these are council roads. I'm not just blaming the state highways. These are council roads I'm talking about. So I honestly think, yes, more needs to be done. And this was a really big wake-up call.
Paul, you'd be no stranger to emergency situations. If you do manage to win the mayoral office, I'm sure this matter will be one of the first things that lands on your table for discussion. Kansas resilience to emergency situations. What can you offer in regards to the conversation of this?
Yeah, look, obviously the lessons that are learnt from those types of devastating activities, we really need to recognise those learnings and incorporate, and they should be inform future builds. So, you know, again, my heart goes out to all those that were devastated by the flooding event in particular. And whilst we can't stop those types of events from occurring, I think we can better prepare for them, and you can't prepare just beforehand. You really need to look at the years from here on. How do we rebuild in those areas, and what do we allow to rebuild? And you know, I suppose if we look at our forefathers 100 years ago, they've had the foresight to build high-set Queenslander homes, and perhaps they learnt lessons from the past. So I do think we need to think carefully about where the builds are, and it's not just Cairns, it's right across Australia, where as the population growth, particularly those locations that are by the sea, people want to see the water, and I don't blame them for that. But sometimes where they build and what they build is probably not conducive to the location. There's no doubt there's lessons to be learnt by any disaster, and it's very difficult to have a scorecard that's 100% because there's so many moving parts. But certainly the preparation to make sure that people are skilled to understand the information and what's forecasted, and think ahead to prepare communities so they can be best positioned to endure through these types of events, and then how we respond afterwards. You know, disaster management in Queensland has always been, I suppose, a recipe for how to work together. You know, over the years, there's been great demonstrations of how agencies and communities at local, state and federal government have come together to not only to respond, but through the recovery. So unfortunately, it's recovery sometimes takes a lot longer than everyone would think. Obviously, you bring into the equation insurers, where invariably in Australia, insurers always take a position where they potentially tried to deny claims, as opposed to what happened during the earthquakes in Christchurch, where the insurers there and the government took a position where we accept claims until it's shown that they shouldn't be paid. So that's another level of frustration. And one of the things that, you know, think should happen in preparation is those insurance companies, they should really be put on notice by not only local government but state and federal government that the expectations are that they have a moral obligation to community to do the right thing, not add to the angst of individuals that have suffered as a result of the event, but try to help them through it and give them a level of comfort. And it's those unknowns, those people that particularly have lost their house and not knowing where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing, when their house is, whether the insurance is going to pay out. And that's, of course, those people that are insured. So, the psychological impacts of some of these events are not seen until years later. And, that Australian and Queensland desire to get on with a job and help mates out, and that's great. But at some point in time, people stop and reflect. And if they've lost their house or lost most of their possessions, they really need the comfort to know what's their future looks like. So I think there's a lot of work to do in that space. And I think, the better we practice and the more confidence people have in the response to disaster management, the more they'll listen to the advice. And, it's like I said, it's a very challenging event, very difficult to pull people together in short notice and understand all the outcomes that could occur, particularly things with floods, even with the best of advice and everything. It's not an exact science, so you're acting on information sometimes that's not very accurate.
Well, just moving on to a development up in your area. I think Trinity yours, or a bit too far south?
Yeah, no, Trinity Park, little part of Trinity Park all the way to Ellis Beach is mine.
Okay. Well, there's a proposed development for some 250 lots, Half Moon Bay or something. Now, if anyone cares to look at that, it's a few metres from the ocean that's supposed to be, sea levels are rising. And then if you look at the creek that runs near there, it runs actually pretty well partly behind that little block of land. So you've got two squeezes. You've got the sea on one side, and just at the back of it and the side of it, you've got Trinity Creek or whatever it is. I'm not sure what the creek is. Yeah, Half Moon Creek. To me, we've just experienced Jasper. Do you think we should be building that close to both the ocean and to a waterway, when you're talking about land that's not more than 2 metres above sea level, if it's that?
Yeah, no, I voted against it. Myself and actually Councillor Pine, surprisingly enough, are the only two that voted against it. I thought the local councillor and even one of the other mayoral candidates, who's currently a councillor, I thought they would stand up for the community. I always fight for community expectation first. Even if we didn't have Jasper, I was against this. In the planning scheme, which is our rule book, the planning scheme suggests for that block of land, because it's got development, it's allowed to be developed, it's zoned for development, but the minimum block size is supposed to be 800 square meters, 800. Now, the biggest block is going to be 580 something square meters, which that's the biggest block, with the smallest houses, like the terrace style house, 178 square meters to 584. When the minimum is supposed to be 800, to me, it just defies logic. Because what the planners then say is, well, it's not a prescriptive planning scheme, it's a performance-based one, so it didn't meet the acceptable outcomes, but we think it performs in a good way. And I'm like sitting there pulling my hair out, because a lot of these, the planners and the people that are making these recommendations to us councillors, they're from big cities like Brisbane and Sydney and stuff, and these things might fit really well in a city where you've got 4 or 5 arterial roads that you can get out of a suburb and get to a shopping centre, get to a fuel station, all that stuff. But you put this at the bottom of Reed Road, right next to a river, right on the beach, when all the governments are telling us, as you just said, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. That's what the governments are saying. Their actions should line up with their words, that there's storm tide inundation, there's sea level rise. We've just seen Jasper and flooding. They say, no, it's all good. We can put in 249 lots on this little block of land. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to develop it, but put something more appropriate there. Then the Reed Road, you've only got the one road up to the highway. And you're going to add, they're trying to say it'll only be 200 cars in the morning in the peak hour. Well, 249 properties, most people have 2 cars at least. It'll be 400 plus cars on top of it. And I live down the Roberts Road, right near Reed Road. I drive out Reed Road every morning to go to work. It's a bung fight right now. I'm trying not to swear. and it's going to be worse with this development. And there's no plans in the short, medium term future to upgrade that road, and even the long term plans in the local government infrastructure plan. It's not that exciting. I think it was totally incorrect. I know I can't. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not supposed to talk negatively about a decision of council, but I honestly think there's been some common sense has flown out the window, and someone needs to pull the reins in. But at this stage, there's a team that dominates council, and they get their way a lot of the time because and that kind of groupthink, and this is why I've always been a very staunch independent, is because when you got groupthink, and I hear people say it sometimes in the streets, but these team leaders, you can't make a good decision. You can't get things done without a team. That to me, every time I hear it, it sounds like Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. He loves that rule of thumb. I'll just get my way. My yes men say yes. No, most governments in the world, in Europe, in Israel, in Asia, in New Zealand, are led by coalitions of governments that they can't form in their own right. So they have to get along and work together. They seem to function. 72 out of the 77 councils in Queensland are led by, they're not team dominated. So 72 out of 75, out of 77, sorry, 72 of them aren't team led, and they seem to get along just fine. You get some decent people in there that really care about the residents and the community expectation and start thinking about these flooding events as well. I think we're going to get much better outcomes. But no, I was dumbfounded and fell over, especially right before an election, because you should vote the same way right before an election or right after an election. But I couldn't believe some of those councillors that they're going to ask these people to vote for them, and they've just done this to them. I'm just like, bye, see ya.
Well, that brings us back to your comments before, Paul, about insurance. I would sort of be amazed what if an insurer would be insuring a property in that sort of location, or A, if people could get insurance, or B, it would be fairly hexy, I would think, for an insurance company to take a risk on properties that are within that sort of belt, right next to the ocean and right near a waterway. And we've just seen a major flooding event in Cairns.
Yeah, there's no doubt that anyone in Cairns is probably going to feel the financial pressure from the insurance companies, whether they're affected or not, because as is always the way, they share the pain across the postcodes or across the LGA. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see, and I've heard lots of stories where even before this event, where insurers are refusing to insure certain locations because of claims history. So that'll be interesting to see how that happens, and potentially in some of those areas, of course, people have lived there for a long while. They're not affluent people. They're in some cases battlers that were fortunate enough to be there for a long while, or they've inherited houses for a long while. But as we've seen, some of the older houses have been removed, and quite substantial homes have been built there. And maybe those people have the financial stability to sustain large insurance hikes. So that'll be something that's worthwhile to watch. But just in regards to what Brett's statement was, when I first got approached by Kevin Burns, he initially wanted me to head up a team, and of course whilst I was retired, I've got a lot of people, and I watch what's going on locally, and I had a sense that people were off teams for a number of reasons, because of the semantics that had been going on, and nothing personal against any of the people there. In actual fact, when I look at some of the people that are running for teams, I see some very good candidates there. So I've got nothing personal against any of the people, but I do have a position that I don't think teams add value democratically to local government. And in fact, prior to my leaving the police, the people that I worked best with all happened to be independents, and I had a sense that they were fiercely enthusiastic around the divisions that they represented, and they really wanted to deliver, and they were great to work with, and they were from different persuasions and different views and all that, but they all had that common denominator that they were extremely passionate about their candidates. So my view was that teams have done their race, and like Brett's outlined, 77 councils, only 5 of which have teams. And when you take out Brisbane, which is the only political council in that they're run on political lines, there's only 4 others where they have teams. And, we've seen in sporting events, teams can be great one day and all of a sudden they have infighting and friction, and all of a sudden the team falls apart. So, these deals that are done in a team perspective, and where whoever the captain of the team is doesn't, there's no checks and balances from within the team. I don't think that's healthy for democracy. I would rather people that are passionate, enthusiastic, the right people are elected to represent the divisions, and that you have an independent mayor that has strong leadership and is able to galvanise those individuals that have been voted in, and determine a vision that everyone or the majority of the community are happy on, and focus on that, and be determined to get there. And so, just reviewing some of the minutes over the last 12 months, I haven't seen really anywhere, and I might be wrong, but, glancing over there, I can't see whether anyone's taken on the captain of the team at any stage. And I would love if I proposed something through council and the councillors thought that it wasn't the right thing, that they would argue quite strongly why it's not the right thing to do. So you need that robust debate. And when you think about it, bureaucracy is there to present proposals and all the data necessary that people can explore whether the proposal should be supported or otherwise. And you need a healthy debate to make sure that everything's considered, and that we're just not getting a tick of approval because the team captain thinks it's a great thing. So, I'm all for independent representation at the division. There's no doubt that there will be some team members get in, and if they're the best people for that division, good on them, and I hope they do get in. But at the end of the day, they need to be firstly passionate about their division and represent the division, which Brett and some others that I know clearly do, that are already in council now and have done a great job. And, they have the support of their constituents. But that's what you need, that healthy debate. And I just don't think that a team concept delivers that. And like I said, nothing personal against any of them, even the people who are leading it. But I'm just not a big supporter of teams. Adds another layer of bureaucracy and political interference that's not necessary.
Just coming on to the topic you brought up a little bit in earlier conversations, Brett, Taylor's Point. Now, I see there's people champion the idea of the state buying it, lumbering the taxpayer with a bill. Then obviously someone would have to maintain it and develop it to some level for public use. I never expect anything out of the state government. Maybe they might stump up the money to grab it, but it's not their job to look after something like that. That's something that would be probably palmed off to the council. I understand, people in the area might think, oh yeah, well, it's a good idea, but to not the other 90% of people in Cairns, we couldn't give a rat's about it. I mean, to me, Taylor's Point looks like a bit of scrubland. It's nothing exceptional, and I couldn't care really less if someone developed it and put townhouses around it, look what that you get on the Mediterranean, and add a bit of appeal to the place. So give us your points of interest in regards to that, and then why the public should be landed with the bill.
Yeah, no, they're all great questions, and I do respect your opinion. I'm just kidding about the booing. The reason I want to say, I'll try and be really quick and succinct. Josephine Blesses, a lot of people saying put it back in public hands, put it back in public. It's never been in public hands. It's always been privately owned. Josephine Blesses, years ago, a really nice old lady. She used to let the troubled youth of Cairns come out and stay out on the property for free. And I disagree. It's a beautiful headland. It's the last undeveloped headland in Cairns. My best friend got married up there. Another really good friend of mine, his wife got married up there. It is beautiful. If you go walking around it, and I'll take you up there one day if you like. But what's happened is Josephine Blesses left it to the Anglican Church years ago to be used for the youth of Cairns. That was her wishes. And so they did that for about 2 years, or a couple of years. Then they sold it off to a developer. Now it was Rob Predejon who built Cora Beach Resort and Thala Beach Resort. Does really great work. And he had to work through different councils, the Vaushia Council and then the Manning Council. And it was when the Manning Council came in 2012, they finally, because Vaushia wasn't going to give him any approvals, they gave him approvals. Now, he was never allowed to just develop the whole headland. He developed, it was one stage, he was going to do 15 blocks, but they're big blocks, but you only had a tiny little building envelope you could put in there. But to get drainage, sewerage, wastewater and everything, it was a dog's breakfast, and it probably never would have worked. So what he did instead, Rob Predejon and his son Seaton, who now runs Thala Beach, and they're absolute gentlemen. And even the people against the Save Taylor's Point people, Eugenie Navarro was the president of that. Before I was even a councillor, I said to her, "Do you want to start this up again?" Because she'd fought it for 15 years or so. And she goes, "Oh, Brett, if you want to, I'll go with you and start it up again, start trying to fight." But she goes, "The thing is, if anyone's going to develop that headland, at least it's the Predejons, because they'll actually take care of the environment, do a good job." Because what he'd come up with was to make what he calls it Thala Beach on steroids, a very nice eco resort that works in symbiosis, I guess, with the environment. But the state government have this peculiar condition that, and he wanted to have like 22 cabins up there. And this is why I'm getting to why I think the state should pay for it, because it's their fault it never got developed. Because if he got to develop those 22 cabins and that eco resort, would have been the best in the world. And I believe him when he says it, because you can see he's got the runs on the board with Thala and with Cora Beach, so he does great work. He was going to have the best eco resort in the world, in his opinion, right in that headland. It would have activated the area. All the itinerants, the illegal dumping, the hooning that happens there right now, it's terrible. All the BFRs, that's an engineering term for big effing rock, the councils had to put them there. They push them aside. They get tow ropes and get them out. So, but the state were the ones that got in the way, not the council, of not allowing him to develop it. There was a condition there that said you have to either go the height, 1.5 times the height of each cabin, or the nearest tree. And the nearest tree is 30 meters tall. They're big trees. So he had to have a 45-meter circumference around every cabin, 22 cabins, that legally he could clear that land if he wanted, which he never wanted to do, because he wanted to plant more natives, more plants, make it really biodiverse. Anyway, and they said, no, because of this condition, you've got the rights to clear it. You've got to pay X million dollars to have that right. And he goes, can't the minister just get a pen out? And they said, oh, this might take 3 to 6 months. 6 years of fighting the state to try and get some common sense. He ended up throwing his hands up. COVID happened. They're making money in Western Australia. Thala Beach is going all right. He goes, I'm just selling it. Now, the two options are a private person, maybe a billionaire Syrian, maybe, Lord Dick Foss from England that just has more money. Maybe a Chinese developer comes over and clears that land, and they've got the time and patience and money to take the state to task, and they'll clear that headland, develop it. Or the state government who held up and caused this not to be, and I can tell you the problems out there are huge. Go talk to the residents on all the streets out there. Like I said, the itinerants and hooning. The state government and the Predejons are saying the $8 million, you don't have to give us $8 million cash. We're willing to look at a land swap or anything else you want to look at. So there's more than one way to skin this cat. Now, Craig Crawford and Bree James, the opposition person running for Barron, have said it's their main priority. So I believe we're going to get a good outcome. And I've been keeping in touch with the landowners, unlike Craig and everyone else, who just wants to get a clip in the paper. I really believe that if they get it, formalise that road, it's a beautiful beach down there, and activate the area, we can get out all the guinea grass. We can plant. Look at Katana wetlands. The Department of Environment and Science said a few years ago, we'll never buy it. There's not enough biodiversity benefits. Look at Katana wetlands was a bloody sand mine, and now look at the biodiversity. We can plant more natives. We can do stuff, put some hikes up in there, and I believe people will travel from all around the LGA, not every single day, but they'll go out there for a hike, and it'll be absolutely beautiful. So I think there's great environmental outcomes we can have and get rid of the illegal dumping, the hooning, everything else. And the reason I believe the state needs to pay for it is because they're the reason it's not developed right now. So that's my 2 bobs worth. That's where I sit on it.
Well, I think the state government in Brisbane as a whole is the bane of our lives in central and north Queensland anyway. You know,
start a new state.
So yeah, it's just not Thala Beach. So we're heading towards the hour. Paul, what sort of major events or focus projects do you envisage bringing up or putting out as a priority?
Yeah, look, I think some of the things that you've been talking about, there's a lot of concern out there in the community, particularly those that have invested in a village type lifestyle, whether they be on the northern beaches or, in around Stratford, Redledge Valley and all that, they love their lifestyle and they are concerned that council approvals could have a huge impact on their lifestyle. So I think one of the critical things going forward for council is to manage that demand that we know that's going to come around growth, and we know that as a council there is a social obligation to meet the demand around housing. So that needs to be managed very carefully. There's lots of opportunities in and around the CBD to enliven the CBD. Develop a vision, and I've had lots of people talk to me about some great individual projects, but what I'm looking at is a comprehensive view of what the CBD future could look like. I'm not interested in just a project. I want to see, what is the vision for CBD in the years to come, and how do we do that in a fragmented way where we encourage investors to come to town. We're very fortunate in Cairns. We have a lot of investors that actually live in Cairns and love Cairns, but as you would expect, they'll take their money to any other location where they get a return on investment. And one of the problems that they see at the moment is council is somewhat difficult to deal with in regards to timeframes and navigating the complexity around building approvals and all that. And so, as we hear with a lot of government bureaucracy, red tape sometimes can be the difference between people investing in location A or location B. So I really think we need to work on how council is run, and create a culture within council that we're here to assist and help, and so that we are a city of choice, whether we're a city of choice for people to move and live here, move and work here, invest in business or invest in developments. That's what council should be driving towards. Now, at the moment, I don't think we're a city of choice. We're a beautiful destination, and we're not maximising what we could or should be into the future. And without that vision that everyone's comfortable with, and when I say everyone, the majority of people, we can never ever please everyone. So we've got to work towards the majority. And I think if we get the CBD singing, that it's a vibrant location, and that businesses are profitable, and there's not the doom and gloom in some of the areas there where you have vacated shops and the streets scrape isn't ideal. We can maximise the tourism that's coming here, whether it be by cruise liners, whether it be by through air traffic, or whether it's people coming here by driving. But it's a beautiful city. It's got everything going. Sure, we've got a few problems, but those problems, I think, if we collectively target, I think we can improve greatly. So I'm very optimistic that in 10 or 15 years we'll be living in a great city, an iconic destination that everyone's proud to be part of. I'd love to see the council, a level of pride in council. It's funny, football teams, the Cowboys, for example, they can come last and people still proudly walk around with their Cowboys shirts on and love going to the Cowboys games. But for some reason, when you talk about the council, there's no level of pride there. And there's some great councillors, there's some great people working in council. So it just needs a little bit of attention to make sure that culture's right, and that we value the workers in the council, and we listen to the workers, and we listen to the community, and we deliver a council that supports the community and what they want to do, not have a council that invariably says no at the first attempt. We would need a council that says yes and works through how yes can be accommodated.
One of the other things is we have a fairly conflicting community in regards to, there's a lot of talk that we've got to have an increased population, and that's what most people want, especially I think people who live here from day dot expect development over time, so they don't have to continually face their kids growing up and have to go somewhere else to get a great job or an education. Most people would hope that their cities grow and improve over time. But we've also got Cairns is a place of a lot of blow-ins, like myself, only 10 years. You've got a lot of areas that are people who have come from the southern states or New Zealand and things like that, and they don't want things to change. You know, they came here for the village life type thing. Well, that's fine. But the thing is, those same people often are asking for services like better public transport and light rail and things like that. Well, that's something that can only come with a growth in population. You can't have services for just a few. You've got to have a basic core population to deliver those types of things. So, do you think there's going to be an ongoing conflict between progress and just keeping things the way as they are with different parts of the community, and how you got to deal with that?
Yeah, look, great question. You're 100% right. Managing expectations is one of the things that needs to occur, and strong leaders should first and foremost manage expectations. So, there is a compromise. So, and Brett would know this well. He talks to people, particularly on the northern beaches, that love their lifestyle and they don't want it to change. But then they love the restaurants and they don't understand why the restaurants don't sustain. Well, restaurants need, they need population coming through the restaurants to sustain the business. So, and the population that exists on a permanent basis just doesn't make it a sustainable business. So you've got to recognise that there is a tipping point in these things, but you've got to manage growth in a way that you're taking those people that have invested in those lifestyles, wherever it be, on the journey. There is significant opportunities for growth in and around what I would call high-density hubs. So if you have a look in Brisbane, for example, in around Chermside Shopping Centre, there's high density around there. I didn't hear anyone jumping up and down about that, because there's where all the services are. They were used to large shopping centres, lots of cars and all that. The inner city, in around the showgrounds there at Fortitude Valley, where they've integrated high density living in and around the showground. So there's possibilities here, and then they need to be explored and they need to be managed carefully. But they don't need to be managed in an ad hoc way. They need a vision that everyone is committed to and stick to the vision. Review it every couple of years to make sure it's still viable and it's still consistent with community needs. But, ad hoc building. So, for example, I'm a bit critical of the use of CBD land. So we've got a 9-storey, very attractive building on the corner of Spence and Sheridan Street, CBD block of land, and then next door to that you've got a ground level car park, and next to that you've got a ground level Australia Post building. So straight away there's 2 blocks of land in the CBD that are utilised that could have been 12 stories high. There could have been an Australian Post at the bottom. There could have been 2 levels of car park, 3 levels of car park. So I really think council needs to look at what sort of CBD they want into the future. Good planning could have seen, for example, the Esplanade could have been, 5, 6, 7 stories high. You come back a block, there are a couple of more stories high. Good planning could have seen people build a high density building on McLeod Street and still have water visibility from the top 2 stories if things were planned properly. So what we've got's what we've got. We need to make sure we plan into the future so that we learn from mistakes of the past. We deliver the Cairns need and want and should have. And a lot of that's about conversations. We've got to engage with those people that are going to invest. And one thing I do know over the years, and very grateful for state and federal investment in things, but I've never seen a minister shed a tear if an investment at a certain location didn't come to fruition, didn't deliver what they thought it would. Whereas, private investors, when they build in something and they put their own money into it, they've got skin in the game. They want to see a good outcome. They want to see an enduring outcome. So I think sometimes we underestimate what those people that are going to invest their own money in, and we should take into account what's the environment need to look like to bring those people to town, because that's what we need. We need a lot of investment. We don't want to be spending council money on a lot of these things as it is. Council, budget, we need to get back to delivering the bread and butter stuff that council need to deliver. And with a good vision, a committed vision, I think people will come knocking on the door to invest. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve. And, the legacy for me would be not what we deliver in the 4 years a term, but I think the true legacy of a leader of a town in the role of mayor would be in 10 or 15 years after they leave, are people cutting ribbons to, buildings and to areas, and thanking God that the council in the day had the nous and the foresight to set circumstances right, so the environment into the future was able to accommodate whatever they were doing.
In your case, Brett, representing the jewel in the crown, Palm Cove, most people there just want things to be a bit more laid back. I mean, personally, I'd hate to live in Palm Cove, and then when the tourist season's on, I can't even get down into my fish and chip shop because it's packed with all these bloody tourists. But your situation just recently, you got involved in talking about a bit of land for a new school. Gee whiz, you would think the state government would have that in hand in regards to they've got all the population data, the growth data, and a planning department or whatever. You think that would be on their list of things to do already, but it beggars belief that the council people would need to bring it up or even push it.
Yeah, well, a lot of things about the state beggars belief. I did talk to representatives from the Department of Education and everything else. We're trying to take care of a few issues in Palm Cove with that block of land. But the way to get the state involved, someone with a checkbook, was the Department of Education, because we've got no public primary schools north of Trinity Beach. So they do have all that data on, I think, Trinity Beach Primary School has about 850 to 900 students at the moment. They used to have 1,100. So they're not at capacity just yet. They've got some at Caravonica they could put and everything else as well. But you got to, as Paul said, you got to plan not for 4 or 5 years out into the future. The Department of Education told me that they need to. They don't call it landlocking anymore, but they need to start looking at. We probably should get some land put aside. The last lot they had was in Kawara Beach, and back in Anna Bly's time, she sold that and let it get built into a suburb. So they don't have any excess land that they own right now for any potential future school, whether it's a kindergarten, whether it's a boutique school, or whether it's a proper big state school. But I couldn't have answered that question any better than Paul just answered too. It's about managing expectations with future growth. As a town or a region, you're either growing or shrinking, and you don't want to be shrinking. Have a look out in Western Queensland what happens when you start shrinking. It's not a good ending, but you have to manage not just the expectation, but you have to manage and balance that growth. So at the moment, and he used the word ad hoc, which, like I said, you answered it very well. I can give you examples of like Warrie, where they've just put in 400, or they've just approved 400 units, which again I voted against. That's going to be a future slum. I'll go on the record right now and tell you that's going to be a future slum. That's way too much density in this tiny little area for lower socioeconomic people who be rammed in there. In 10, 15 years from now, I'm just like, and that's something that's a legacy a negative legacy issue that our council is going to leave onto the community. And I'm like, how can we be doing this? And then with the infill, because our region is very narrow. You said it before. It's linear. It's 63 kilometres long from Mirrawinny to Ellis Beach. You've got the Great Dividing Range on one side and the ocean on the other. So out here on Northern Beaches, land is there's not much land there. But instead of going into suburbs where someone's lived for 30 or 40 years, and all of a sudden allowing all these little 235 square metre developments to go in, dual occupancies and split titles and everything else, where the planning scheme says 600 or 800 square metres minimum, but you're starting to let all these little developments happen. You change the look and feel of that suburb where people have set down their lives and they're raising their kids. The biggest expense most people ever have in their life is their house and land. So when you change the look and feel of a suburb, that's not the right way to go about it. That's what I call ad hoc in nature. And as Paul said, we need visionary people to think outside the box in the future. Let's think about where we're putting this high density, because we are going to have to put it. And I love the idea around the shopping centres. No one's going to complain about that. But when you go into Trinity Beach and you go into Palm Cove and you start making big changes, that's when you're going to really ruffle some feathers. and change the look and feel and people's lifestyle. And we shouldn't be messing with that. We're supposed to be working for those people. We're not supposed to be dictating to them. But I will finish off saying Palm Cove at the moment does have a little bit of an identity crisis. You've got some people that have moved up there to retire, and they want it to be a sleepy village. But then you've got, as Paul said, you've got these businesses that need tourists, need locals to thrive. They want it to be a vibrant village, which back in the 90s it really was. When we grew up, sometimes me and my mates, we'd go to Palm Cove for the night rather than going to all the nightclubs in town. It was a happening place, and it was never like until 5 a.m. and crazy stuff, but it was a really vibrant village. So is it a Sleepy Hollow? Is it a vibrant village? It's not up to me to dictate to them. But Palm Cove, there is a couple of groups out there right now trying to work with everyone to come up with what their vision for Palm Cove is. And what Paul's suggesting is, if he gets in as mayor, is we're going to have that vision on a macro level for the whole LGA. And I think that's a fantastic way to do things. Let's be visionary. Let's think outside the box, and let's try and bring people along for the ride rather than just dictating to them.
Just one issue before we wrap it up, and we'll get you to talk on your final sales pitch. But with the expectation you both get into council and the first meeting, one of the topics that is going to be out front for and big ticket item is going to be Cairns water system. We're looking at a proposal that started off around about the $200 million mark, supposedly had a 15-year-old lifetime to take water out of the Mulgrave. That figure is now going up towards past the 400 million, heading towards 500 million. Probably with population growth, probably only get us 10 years life out of that. Do you go back and revisit that, or you just push ahead and try to get the state and federal governments to share more of the cost? Do you think that's going to be a primary issue in this immediate year?
Well, so I might take it first, Paul, if that's all right, because I was one of the guys that voted for it. Yeah, absolutely, it's a big issue and should be addressed. It's the biggest single expense that any Cairns council's ever had. In fact, I voted on the floor, and it was just after the Jasper event with the flooding. I was actually going into that meeting. We were supposed to have that meeting the week before or 10 days earlier, and I was actually going to vote against it because I thought it's offensive, right? We're the outgoing council, and we're dropping the biggest infrastructure spend we've ever dropped on a new council that's incumbent, and it's locked in because we had to lock in the companies to build this thing over 4 years. And this thing, like you said, it started off at 235 million or whatever it was going to be, and now it's 479, circa $500 million. You can add to that, and you can put a couple of years delay on it. And this new council, it's already locked in. Like, this is going. So our officers are trying to work with the state and feds to get them to come to the party more. The only reason I changed my mind and voted for it was because we became 2 hours away from having no treated water in Cairns with that Jasper event. Now, the state and federal governments have told us they're not going to build any more dams. And we've been doing, we're implementing smart water systems so people can detect leaks. We've had a leak detection system, 2 lots of them over the last 10 years, and we've reduced the amount of wastage of water already. We're trying to do everything we can to bring people's water use down, education. We can't go through and get to a situation where we have no water. So I end up voting for it on that basis because we've been told nothing else is going to work and everyone agrees this is the right way. I did ask in workshops about a year ago when we found out that instead of being the 235 or $45 million, it was going to be more than 300 million at that stage. And I said, can you tell me who got fired for this? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, who got fired? In the private sector, how come this kind of incompetence is accepted at every government level, local, state, and federal? But in the private sector, a colossal mess up like that, people will be losing their jobs. And then the mayor said to me, Bob Manning at the time, in the room with everyone, he goes, who said it was going to be 245 million? I looked at him and said, we did. We went out there, we got the Taipans involved, we got all these organizations involved to say, we need this. We embarrassed the state and federal governments into coming and giving the amount of 107.5 million each that we asked them for. Because we told them that number. And I said, what do you mean? Who told them that number, Bob? Are you crazy? And I said, someone needs to get their butt kicked over this and lose their job. No one lost their job. And now it's over, like I said, circa $500 million. And I don't think there's much that the new council can do because it's locked in with those contractors. But I mean, I'll throw over to Paul now if you've got a different opinion. But we have a water issue, and the reason I changed my vote, I thought it was offensive to do this to an incoming council, was only because of what happened in Jasper and how close we were. Because a lot of people think because of all our rainfall, Cairns, we don't have a water problem. At 100% capacity of our dam at Copperload, that equals the amount of 20% of the capacity of the dam in Townsville. So when they're at 20%, that's our 100%. We do have a water issue, and we're being told no more dams. So I did change my mind, and I felt kind of like I had to vote with it, but that's where I stand.
Okay, Paul, you're going to have to wear this one.
Yeah, look,
I
I just can't believe we live in the one of the wettest regions in Australia, and we're talking about water shortages. So I'll put that on the table first. Look, we've seen blowouts in estimated builds of assets, in recent times, whether it be in council, state, or federal government. So I suppose it's not surprising that we would expect that costs rise, and in some cases that's just the world that we live in now. But I do feel a bit sorry for local governments in that over the years, the options that local government have in regards to enduring water supplies has been really restricted when state and federal governments have reduced what those options might be. So rather than having all options on the table, they say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, and you really get down to a really slim opportunity to meet the demands that you need, and in doing so, you obviously alienate yourself with a lot of people that think that that's not the option to go with. So, as Brett articulated, we're in that predicament now, and the mathematics that, as I read it, council are saying the tipping point's in 2026. They estimate that the work's going to take 2 years to deliver. 2 minus from 26 is 24. We're there now. We haven't started the work. So one thing's for sure, it should be front and centre, first agenda item on every meeting until it's sorted out. And one of the things that is frustrating for me is when I go through some of the agenda items and I look at some of the things that are put before council that add no value whatsoever to the average person, that we really need to get back to the fundamental issues that council should be concentrating on. And, I'm sure that if the right people get elected there, that's what they'll be concentrating on, is making sure that the bread and butter stuff that council should be delivering for the population is the things that are worked on, and that we show that we are able to deliver. But I think the water issue is going to be a costly burden on not only the incoming council, but I think it's going to be a costly burden on councils for a number of terms, because there's no doubt there will be a residual debt, even if the state and federal government come into the party. And again, as Brett pointed out, it's not a lifeline that goes on forever. There's already been a limitation to what that will provide. So, I would be keen to see what other options there could be on the table if there wasn't those political parameters from state and federal government, and to see whether there's actually a position where, as a council, we can argue the case that these other things need to be looked at. They are something that will solve our problem, particularly if it's at a better cost. So that's something that I'd be keen to do further down the track.
Well, one of the things you probably need to put on one of the agendas soon is what comes after this water project, because it's only got a short life expectancy anyway. So you need to get something on the table, especially if you're taking that long-term view. But I also take offence. I would take offence that water's a state government issue. Now, Logan Council, Gold Coast Council, Sunshine Coast, other councils, they don't have any issues about finding water. I mean, the state government within Sun Water in the southeast takes care of all their problems. It's offensive that they lumber councils in regional Queensland with this and sort of really divorce themselves when they're responsible for delivering water to the people.
Yeah, and sorry, Bill, I was remiss of me before when I said, so this project, it doesn't last for 10 years or 15. It's actually a 50-year project, stage one. But in 10 or 15 years, we're hoping to push that to 15. Stage 2 needs to happen. That's already been planned out. No, we don't know the costings. Again, I'm not going to say a number because we've seen what happens with costings, right? But no, originally stage 1 was going to be what this is in the Mulgrave. Stage 2 was going to be from the Barron River, pulling some water there. But because of the turbidity issues and everything, it's a lot harder to cleanse and get all that out. And stage 3 was coming back to the Mulgrave. What the new stage 2 is going to be is ignore the Barron, and it will be on the same on the Mulgrave again. So this project will last. The shelf life is 50 years, but in the next either 10, we're hoping to push it out to 15 years from now. Then we'll start implementing stage 2. So that was already in the process and being talked about. This project's been in the pipeline for 10 years, or actually more. But the reason it's been pushed along for so long is they were doing that feasibility study for the dam. Now, to answer your question on why the state government's not helping, and I believe they will, the state and feds will come on in a much bigger capacity, especially for the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. Time will tell there, but I believe they will. But the reason the state government isn't taking care of our water is Cairns Council is one of the few councils in Queensland. There are a few. We run the water ourselves, so it's a profit centre. Like the only councils have botanic gardens, swimming pools, club like fields for club sport that all cost money and don't make a profit, right? If councils made profits, you wouldn't need rates. But the one section of our council that actually does make money is the water. So our council, Sunwater, the state would love to grab our water because they'd make the profit off it then, and then they would be responsible. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to look at having Sunwater take it over. But when it's an aspect of council that's actually doing really well for us and helping us to keep those rates down, that's another thing we need to look at. Is it better just to give it to them and put our rates up higher, or is it better for us to keep it ourselves? What's the better outcome long term?
Okay, thanks for that, Brett. We've gone over the hour, so we'll just wrap it up. If I could just start with you, Brett, and just give me a bit of an outline of why people should vote for you again for the third time, and why they shouldn't look alternative because they've been looking at your face for far too long.
Yeah. So my sales pitch is honestly like I've got an 8-year track record that I can be judged on, and I'm happy to be judged on it because I know I've done a good job. I think what a lot of people like about me, even if they don't agree with my opinion all the time, is they can trust me. They know that I wear my heart on my sleeve. I mean what I say. My words and actions line up, and I'll continue to be that. I'll continue to get that if they vote for me. If sometimes there's just wind of change. I don't believe that's going to be the case this year, but sometimes they just want someone else, and that's fine too. I'll always honour whatever democratic outcome there is, but I honestly believe when people shake my hand, look me in the eye, they know they can trust me, and that's going to be enough. And my track record again is enough to judge me on. So what you see is what you get, and you'll get more of the same if you got me. You know what to expect.
Okay, Paul, your last sales pitch.
Yeah, look, well, firstly, I think what's lacking in council at the moment, and again, nothing personal about anyone, but council needs substantial leadership to take the city to the destination that it should and could be at. And why it needs to go there is, our economic reliability is going to be determined on how council shape the city into the future. We really need to make sure that we're attracting the right people here to live, the right people to invest in business and build the infrastructure that we need to do. That leadership also extends. Sadly, we're in the most beautiful spot in Australia, I think, but that comes with its hazards. And as we've seen recently, we have the climatic conditions that unfortunately come and devastate our shorelines, whether it be floods or the winds that come with the cyclone. So, I've got considerable experience in disaster management, and I think that that would do well for the city in the future. I have a very good financial management history where I deliver on budget, and certainly in talking to people around the town, they know what their rates to go up. They want to make sure that those fundamental things that council are supposed to deliver, that they're doing that and they're doing it right. They're not interested in all this hairy-fairy stuff that the council seems to be competing with inner Sydney or inner Melbourne in regards to some of the activities that they're pursuing. So a bread and butter council is what I'd be looking at doing. transparency with everything we do. If we get it wrong, we should be showcasing that and learning from our lessons and getting it right. So that's what I want to do. I want the city to be proud of the fact that they live in Cairns, and I want to make sure that they have pride in their council, and that the council is a high performing council, and that the right people are voted into the divisions and they've got strong leadership.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. If you just stay on the line, I'll just wrap the show up and introduce next week.
Thanks, Bill.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Nice
if you
talking.
enjoyed tonight's show, please like, share and subscribe to our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, in this series, this is the second one in the series on the Cairns Council elections. I've already approached the teams in regards to their participation. We've had a knockback from the Unity team, no interest from Team Eden, and we're still waiting back to hear from Community First. So next week it's likely to be another couple of independent candidates. So join me again next week, next Thursday night, same time. Thank you.